Good morning from New Jersey, and good evening to everybody who's watching me in India. Namaskar. My name is Dr. Astha Bhatia. I'm a dentist by training, and I have a master's in public health from the US. I live in New Jersey. I've been working in pharma since the last 12 years, and at present I work as a clinical research scientist in a company that plans, designs, and executes clinical trials for cancer patients. As a clinical research scientist, as a public health worker, and as a clinician, the one thing that I did find early on in my career is health. When we when we deem a person healthy, it's not just the physical aspect of health, but it's also the mental aspect of it. Health is a holistic approach. It's not just physical, it's also the mind and the body. The one quote that I read once, which actually had a lasting impression on me, was happiness can be found in the darkest of hours if only you remember to turn on the light. And that quote is very, very applicable in the situation that we are facing today. Today, we are living in a world that's unlike any other situation that we've faced. The world has changed completely over the last 2 months or so. What was our normal before has completely, changed by 180 degrees. We're living in a world where all the things that we took for granted are changed. Going to the mall, eating in a restaurant, meeting your friends and family, touching people, hugging people, sending your kids off to school, going to work, talking to your colleagues. Everything that we took for granted all of our lives has changed completely and drastically. We are now having to settle to something that's going to be our new normal, at least for some time. As a clinical researcher, I do know that the enemy that we're facing, the coronavirus or the COVID-19, it's an enemy that we cannot even see. It's something that's there, but when it's not tangible, when we cannot touch something, when we cannot see it, it's even more difficult to comprehend what that enemy, the coronavirus, is capable of. So we are in a very, very unique situation. We have to settle with something. The measures that we are taking, they're not going to be short-term measures. As a clinical researcher, I do know there are two aspects of the future steps involved. There is the vaccination aspect, which is being studied, and then there's the treatment aspect, which a lot of pharma companies are doing their clinical trials. A treatment is something when we already have the infection and we find modes to treat it. A vaccination is something kind of like the polio vaccine, the smallpox vaccine, where we give it to normal healthy people so that they develop immunity to not get I'll just rotate my camera, to not get that infection. So all these aspects are being studied now, but keeping that in mind, I think there is a long road ahead of us. So because there's a long road ahead of us, these changes that we are seeing, the social distancing, the lockdowns, the staying away from people, the isolation, the quarantine, some people losing their jobs and their livelihood and earnings, they are going to be not short term. They might come in intervals. So we have to be better prepared. While I was researching, I found there's a lot of information available regarding, how to deal with the physical health aspect of coronavirus. You keep hearing, wash your hands, stay away from people, avoid getting infection. But the one aspect that's not been talked about much is the mental health aspect. And that's why today, for me, I am going to talk about, you've heard a lot about all the physical health aspects, but I'm going to talk about the mental health aspect of how COVID-19 might affect us in the short and the long term. And I will provide some common sense strategies which will help prepare us better or help us to deal with the situation better. These are all common sense approaches, but sometimes in situations like these, it's very easy to forget what's a common sense and a practical thing to do. So I'm just going to give some reminders regarding how a common sense approach can help you deal with the mental stress and health aspect of COVID-19 better. When I did my research, I was trying to find, in the past, if there were any kind of mass casualties, any kind of disasters, and what were the mental health after effects of such disasters later. The one research that I found was in the New England Journal of Medicine, where they said after the Twin Towers fell in New York City, after 9/11, 1 out of 10 people showed signs of some kind of disorder, mental disorder, and 25% of people reported increased alcohol intake after 9/11. There was another research that I found, which was from the New England Journal, from the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry, and this was about the SARS epidemic that happened in 2003. It was found that a lot of people who faced this epidemic came up with signs of PTSD, which is a post-traumatic stress disorder. And it usually is seen in war victims, but it was very interesting that people who faced the SARS epidemic showed the after effects of this kind of a mental disorder. COVID-19 is even more unique than whatever we've faced, because it's not just the health aspect of it. It's not just, people are getting affected, people are dying. It's not just that aspect, but there's also the aspect of social isolation due to physical distancing. There's also the aspect of people losing their jobs, economies suffering. So all this definitely is going to have not just a short, but a long-term effect on the mental health status of people. So we have to be better prepared on how we are going to cope with it, how we're going to prepare for it. As I said, I am going to talk about, whatever I'm going to talk about might be common sense approach, which we are aware, but in times like these, it's good to remind ourselves. Talking about how to cope with the mental health aspect of COVID-19, let's just go back to the basics. A healthy mind stays in a healthy body. So in order for your mental health and your mind to be healthy, it has to be a two-step approach. Taking care of your body and taking care of your mind. Taking care of your body. What can we do to take care of our bodies while we are in this lockdown situation, while we are in this, social distancing situation, everything? What can we do? Get enough sleep. It's basic. It's very easy because, we are in a situation where we don't have to wake up early in the morning. We don't have to go to work. We don't have to wake up in the morning to send our kids to school. It's very easy to, let our schedule go off. But that in turn, and this is not like a short-term thing. It's not a 1 week or a 2 week thing that we can let our schedule go off. If we do let it happen, it is going to have effects on our body, and in turn, it is going to have effects on our mental health. So getting enough sleep, having a set bedtime, having a set wake-up time is definitely going to help. The second point to taking care of your body is getting enough physical activity. I know gyms are closed. I know in India you may not be able to go to the parks and maintain social distance. But, there are opportunities within your home. We all have, people living in apartments have balconies. Yoga, that's an Indian thing. And that's an excellent form of workout, meditation, and relaxation. Try to incorporate, people living in apartments. You have the corridor. Maintain social distance, follow the WHO guidance, but do try to incorporate some kind of physical activity. Eating healthy. We are in a lockdown situation. It seems like, I have a bag of chips. It's so convenient. I have a bag of bhujia. Biscuit pade hain kitchen mein. Cookies pade hain. It seems very easy to just pick a bag and, just make it a meal. That's not going to work. We have to consciously remember to eat healthy. so that our body and mind stay healthy. Avoiding tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. Sometimes when we are facing an anxious situation, it's very easy to use these as coping mechanism. When you're stressed, you want to rely on alcohol. We have to remember that these are all short-term coping mechanisms and not long-term. So you might feel better in the immediate effect, but they are going to in turn have effects on your body and mind. Tobacco, it's not just about your body in general, but research has shown that tobacco affects your lungs and you're more prone to COVID-19. Tobacco users are much more prone to COVID-19. So now may be the time to let go of that habit. Now may be the time when you can bring about that change, since, there's nothing else to do. Why not work on yourself? Drugs and substance abuse, when we are faced with stressful situations, sometimes these things, one starts relying on these things. Unless you have been prescribed drugs for your mental condition by a healthcare professional, this is not the time to rely on drugs. Screen time. This is, pros and cons of screen time. Right now, we're in a situation where we have to rely on screens since there's not much, socialization and nothing major to do. But there has to be a healthy balance, because screen time, just like alcohol, just like drugs, just like tobacco, is an addiction. And because it is an addiction, it can lead to severe mental and body health issues eventually. Try to limit your screen time to a few hours a day. Try to disconnect. Try to shut down screens 30 minutes before bedtime. I know we all hear it, but now may be the time to actually implement them. Relax and recharge. It's very easy, since we are stuck, many of us are parents, have little kids. It's very easy to be stuck in the routine regularly. But if you do not take time out for yourself, even if it's a few minutes of the day, and do things quietly with yourself, you are going to get burnt out. Not just in terms of your body, but also in terms of your mental health. You are going to feel those stresses. So these points will help you take care of your body, and in turn, a healthy body would have a healthy mind. The second step towards mental health would be taking care of your mind. Reducing all the stress triggers surrounding you. I talked about having, regular bedtimes, but having a regular routine is very important for mental health. The predictability keeps your mind more in control. If in this situation you let your routine go away, you don't have a set bath time, you don't have a set bedtime, meal time, try to, even if you're working from home, try to get dressed. It all keeps you in a positive frame of mind, and that reduces any kind of stress and any kind of triggers that might put you in a state where you go into that negative frame of mind and have short and long-term mental health issues. This one point, the next point, is actually my favorite point to remember, especially during these times, which is limiting exposure to news media. We live in a time where there's so much commercialization. News channels have to rely on getting their ratings and TRPs up in order to be, relevant in this current world. And how do they get, people to watch? That's by sensationalizing and selling the news in a way that catches your eye. The other day, I was watching some news channel where they were using terms like New York has been brought down to its knees, people are suffering, and, they just were focusing on the negative aspect of it. Nobody, if they start telling all the positive aspects, you'll be like, okay, everything is fine, let's turn the TV off. But negativity sells in terms of news. So when you watch news constantly, throughout the day, since there's not much to do and, we have this situation going on in our lives, you want to keep abreast with the news. But it also puts you in a very negative frame of mind. You just think that the world is going to end, I'm going to die, I'm going to get the coronavirus. And that's not what we need right now. We are working towards finding solutions, but Sitting at home and dreading what's going to happen is not the solution. How do we do that? Try to limit your time watching the news. Go to reliable sources to get your information. Like for me, I go to the website, the WHO, World Health Organization website, to get my numbers, to get the data of what's happening in the world. Since I'm in the US, I also go to the CDC website, which is the Center of Disease Control website. They have all the reliable, unsensationalized facts and numbers. That keeps me in a positive frame of mind. The third aspect to reduce stress and negative feelings is staying busy during these times. We don't have much social engagements. We don't have a lot of activity outside to do. But you know what? How many times in the last maybe year or so have you opened a closet in your home or like a store in your home and you saw that it was a mess, but then you closed it because you did not have the time to clean it up because you were so busy in your life with your job, with your kids, with your work? Now may be the time. You have time. Why not focus on getting that project completed? That's going to keep you busy. That's going to keep you occupied. And once you've accomplished that task, it's going to give you a feeling of such positivity that you accomplished a big task. And that's going to make you, just put you in a positive frame of mind. Focusing on positive thoughts, I cannot stress this enough. It's very easy to go in a negative frame of mind when we hear all this information. There's so many deaths happening, all of that. But we do have to find things that we are thankful for during this time. Personally, for me, I always kept saying how I don't have enough time to spend with my kids because my work is so busy. You know, I have so many things going on. I'm thankful for the fact that now I have some time to spend with my kids and, you know, do things with them. So I focus on that positive. There's always need to maintain a sense of hope. I'm hopeful. Since I'm a clinical researcher, I'm hopeful that my industry, you know, people working in healthcare will find a solution. We are much better placed than, you know, people in the past who face such situations, since we have ample, you know, technology, ample research, ample resources available. So that should give us a sense of hope instead of just thinking, oh my gosh, we are, you know, this is going nowhere. Try to focus on positive thoughts. Rely on your spiritual beliefs and religious support systems. If you're religious, you know, go try to rely on religion. If you're spiritual, meditation would be a good way. Yoga, I talked about. That's going to reduce your stress and put you in a positive frame of mind. And lastly, to reduce any kind of stress triggers, try to set priorities. I talked about taking up a project, but now is not the time to have a list of goals which are going to be life-changing. You want to prioritize what all you can achieve in your time. You don't want to be overwhelmed by the list of things that you put for yourself to do. So try to be reasonable in terms of what your priorities are and what goals you want to achieve. Don't try to be a superhero during these times. So these are some of the factors that might help you take care of your mind by avoiding stress triggers. What else can we do during these times? We can connect with others. I know we cannot physically connect with others, but to give you an example, the last pandemic that happened in the world before coronavirus COVID-19 was the Spanish flu that occurred in 1918. We are much better placed now because we have the technology. Even if we are physically isolated from people, we have technology that we could use to connect with people. You know, how many times have you thought, oh, you know, this cousin of mine lives so far away and I want to connect with this cousin. Or this school friend of mine, I lost touch with this school friend. I want to connect with them, but you didn't have the time. Now might be that time. Use technology, use WhatsApp, use FaceTime, use Google Hangouts, Zoom. Try to do FaceTime with people. Try to connect with them, even though you cannot physically go meet them, since you have time, more time now. Personally, for me, I've scheduled FaceTime calls with my team at least once a week. So we do like a camera call. We see each other, we talk, and it's so therapeutic. It just puts you in the right frame of mind. It takes all the stress triggers off. do something for others. Here in where I live, there is an organization that volunteers for the elderly people, the old people who cannot go grocery shopping, who are vulnerable. This organization lets you volunteer to drop groceries at their doorsteps. That, you need to find these avenues to help others, because it's not just about keeping yourself busy. It's about establishing connections and just feeling good about, the situation in general. Just text your neighbors, friends, family to ask how they're doing. How's their, how are they coping? It's just, it's not just them who will feel good about it, but you in general would feel better about it. So these are all common sense approaches which we lose track of in our day-to-day lives, but this might be an ideal situation to go back to those basics, to revisit our strategy towards life, and to maybe make a change. All these points, there might be other points, but all these points are the basics to staying in a good mental health condition during these times when you might feel helpless. Towards the end, even though you're taking all these points, you have to know how to recognize what's normal during these times and what's not. Stress is normal. Stress is body's normal physiological, psychological reaction to any kind of, abrupt changes in our lives. So it's okay to be stressed. Stress can, manifest in the form of anger. It can manifest in the form of anxiety, sadness, depression, all of that. The way it might affect you is you might have a loss of appetite. You might not want to do the basic, duties of your daily life. You might not want to indulge in any kind of, there might be days where you would just not want to do anything, no eating, you might have body aches, pains. All this is stress manifesting itself in different physical forms. Stress is normal. There might be days where you feel like that. But despite your best efforts, if you're not able to come out of it, despite your best coping strategies, if such signs and symptoms last for a longer period of time, that's when it's time to maybe seek help. And help, it's not necessary to seek help professionally. There are various avenues where you can seek help. How can you seek help? Sometimes it's about just picking the phone or, using your texts or messages and getting in touch with a loved one or a family member. You may not have to tell them what you're feeling, but just talking to them sometimes breaks you out of that stress mode where you do not want to do anything. How many times has it happened that you talked to somebody, even though you didn't share your problems, but after talking to those people, you just felt, so much better that you wanted to do things. You wanted to just get up and accomplish all the tasks that you were avoiding. So do that. That's a way of seeking help. Go to your spiritual or religious leader. If you have a guru, if you have, some kind of spiritual leader that you follow, maybe they are offering some kind of online services. I know a neighbor of mine, they had Easter last weekend, and since she couldn't go to church, the church actually broadcasted their mass on Facebook. And she's an older lady, and she said she felt so much better after hearing and seeing the mass. She just felt so much better and so much positive. So why not go into those kind of avenues to seek help? And if you feel nothing works, nothing is helping you in this situation, pick up the phone and talk to your doctor, your family doctor. Talk to them, tell them what you're facing. There might be things which are completely normal, and they might provide you with coping strategies. And if that doesn't help, there are helpline numbers. Look up the helpline numbers, the mental health helpline numbers in your area. Look them up. Try to talk to them. Many a times something, it's not something as serious, but talking to a professional gives you a better perspective to deal with such situations. So why not do that? Towards the end, we talked about all these points. All we can say is sometimes we face these challenges and these difficulties, but for every difficulty and every negative experience that we face, there is an opportunity to grow and to learn. I, for once, know that once we are out of it, I will have a greater appreciation of the basic things of life. I am going to make a conscious effort to stay connected to the people that I'm missing now. There might be times when I was so busy that I took those people for granted. And now, because I've had time to introspect, I might go back to, appreciating those relationships better, appreciating the basic, the facilities that I had better. I might have more increased personal strength now, because when we face a challenging situation and we come out as winners, it just changes your personal strength levels tremendously, because you've been through, a dark phase and you've come back. So I'm hopeful for that. I think this period has given me a more spiritual aspect. So I feel like I've grown spiritually as a person. So all these are positives. When we come out of it, that's what we are hoping for. All these are the positives that you might see once you come out of it. So just to summarize whatever we talked about, this is a few pointers that these are kind of like take-home messages from my talk here. During this situation, have a positive outlook. I cannot stress enough, and I will quote the quote that I used in the beginning of my presentation. Happiness can be found in the darkest of hours if only you remember to turn on the light. So have a positive outlook. Take care of your body. I did talk about all the pointers to take care of your body. Take care of your mind. Avoid stress triggers. Move away from all the negative triggers that are going to put you in a negative frame of mind. Focus on your spiritual growth. Have a greater appreciation of life. Stay in touch with friends and family via virtual, connections. And be hopeful. We are all going to emerge much stronger, much better, with a greater appreciation of what we had in the past. And it is, to me, I know we are in a dark hour, but I see light at the end of the tunnel, not just spiritually, but also as a scientific researcher. I know we'll get through it. I know we'll emerge stronger. Until then, we have to focus on the positives. Keep working on the pointers that I provided. Go back to your basics and go back to your common sense. Thank you so much for your time today. Namaskar.